can bring time to make me forget this day.
Now these are just some more of the pictures from, boy, this is such a great book, from the book that Howard Rush graciously loaned us. I'm just going to run through these real quick and then we're going to get back to the shop and get some work done. I'm ready. Boy, once again, thanks to Howard Rush for a great book. This is really a fantastic book, and I've been reading. Now, what I'm doing with the first fuse here, and I'm finally getting to do some work on my own plane. Jeez, it's unbelievable. Shovel and snow, doctor visits, and working on peripheral projects. It's unbelievable. Anyway, one of the things I've done is I've set up, just like I said in a drawing on a previous tape, I've set up so I have clearance here. Let's see if I can get this on the macro lens. I want to have equal clearance all around. I've done that with pieces of IBM card. And what I've done is if this is not enough clearance, is just sand one side down just a little bit until from the top, the bottom, the sides, from every possible angle it's dead even. I want to have, you can see the clearance up here. A lot of people try to make this so tight, and what happens is as soon as you tighten the engine, or you get a spinner backplate that's a little crooked or something, boom, you lose it. So I want to keep that clearance even. And I'm going to shim this maybe at 2 or 3 different spots until I have exactly the same amount of clearance all around. Now notice, this is a true turn. This is actually the spinner that's off the Red Baron. This is just a little smaller than what we're going to use as far as the white spinner goes. This is the super light plastic one, but this has no backplate. So I have to allow for that in my calculations when I make this up. And this is Joe's first choice, is to use those white spinners, but this will allow me to use either the True Turn, the Red Baron spinner, a Bob Baron spinner, or the white spinner, and I'll just have just enough taper in this that I probably can use any of them. You know, first choice is to have the shims roughly like a 3-bladed prop, but it really isn't critical. I'm just moving them in and out, making sure I have equal clearance. I'd like about 15,000. The whole object here, though, the real bottom line object is I need that clearance so I can adjust my final tuning on the motor offset. Or I can always go back to 0. You know, if you're really a fanatic at appearance judging, you can loosen a motor and put it back to 0, but almost nobody even bothers to do that anymore. Okay. I think the last guy I saw do that was Stan Powell. But pretty much everybody's got realistic spinner fits now. We're back to that. Okay. Now once I have that, I want to check that from the front. Let's see if I can show this. It's difficult to... I have the same clearance everywhere, and I can still move this. See, I can move the nose ring just a little bit up and down. Get it exactly in the middle. The shims hold it in position. Then I can tack it with CA. Now once I get exactly the alignment I'm looking for, I'm just going to tack it in first. Thin CA will give me a little bit of a tack. Hit it with the Q-tips. And once it kicks off, I'll gently take the shims out, see if I have equal clearance. If I don't, the reason I'm not gluing it permanently is I want to be able, if it's not straight, perfect, I can break it out. Now you could, if you really want to be a fanatic, you could get a 15 thousandths feeler gauge, probably from a car supply store, 20 thousandths would be fine, and go around. If it's tight in some spot, you can just adjust it right now. You can shove shims, you can sand, grind, but to get that nose ring nice and straight in the front is a very, very critical thing right at this point. Now you can see the clearance here is almost perfect. And if you wanted to, of course, just get the old feeler gauge out and you can check it. Now that that's in semi-permanently now, one of the things I can do right now, I can get a little filler block back here or look around the front just to get as much stress on that, get it that it's nice and solid, and then I'll permanently glue that into position. Just put plenty of CA on it. Now I want to take some real hard, this is rock hard balsa, and make up a little spinner support up in the nose. And just what I do is I just do a little test fit here, right up in the corner. Trick here is to get the grain on a triangle. Grain going corner to corner. You don't want to have the grain going front to back or this way. Corner to corner will give you the best support. Now if you want to get a good alignment, I can just scribe a little line across the back here. And what I'll do is just do a little test fit. Now where the hell's the other block? I got the left side block. I had to relieve this a little bit so it'll go in by the motor. And I want to get it as flat as I can. Before I glue it in. Of course, you're real lucky if you don't glue your finger to the part at this point. Now, because the grain is going this way, triangulation, I want to squeeze this in. Even though this is hard balsa, I want to have that crushed right into position and check that I'm not losing my nose ring fit. Now obviously I'll just repeat the same thing on the other side and then check that I have a good alignment here. I haven't lost any of my fit on the nose ring. Now with the two pieces, again, remember, look at the grain. Whenever you're doing triangulation, you want the grain going this way. You don't want the grain following any of the edges. What we're trying to do is complete the box. Anytime you do this, you're trying to complete the box. The corners are where things flex. You always want to triangulate the corners. I want to check. You can see I've maintained good clearance in there. Now I can take the motor out and clean out that area by the nose ring, and that'll be the next step here. Now from the front view, I want to see that I've maintained the clearance all the way around the edge, equal around the whole edge. Now this would be an appropriate time to mention that if you're going to set the clearance, I always take the tiger nose cones off and grind off, just do it on a belt sander. Get rid of those ribs. Those ribs makes it almost impossible to keep the prop on tight. And then take a knurling tool, take anything and grind. In this case I took the that little engraver and make it rough, make it like sandpaper so you get a grip. Now I'm also putting a little filler block. Notice the grain's going straight up and down here. Gives us a little bit more support on the nose ring. Ties this all in. I put a little triangular block here, a little block here. I've got all of my little blocks. I'm trying to support this nose ring in as many ways as possible before we actually go on to the next step. Now see, I always leave the blocks just a little bit higher than they have to be. It's all going to get trimmed in eventually. Well, I want to have this is a Zona saw without the handle, and I can trim this right back using a Zona saw and then finalize it with a little sanding block, just anything that's extra. Now I just want to seal all these areas, all these little blocks and things, all these little triangulation pieces. This will stiffen them up even further, even though they're made out of kind of hard wood. A nice coat of this slow drying CA will harden that up. Get an idea of just how many little pieces are holding that nose ring. That nose ring is a significant part of the fuselage. I just like to sand this all out. Make sure this is a nice workmanlike finish in here. Radius all the edges. And I'll take the other fuselage, get the other one, and do the other one off camera too, so we're ready to go. I'm trying to keep both of these up to roughly the same point in construction. Now I'll just do the other one off camera and we'll be back to this. I don't know how much time we're going to have today, but it's really kind of a pain in the ass making everything double the amount of work, but knowing that these things are going to be very close to being identical makes this all worthwhile. Now with both of those finished, I really feel like we're making some progress here, finally. Boy, you plug along at this stuff and all of a sudden it starting to shape up, starting to look like an airplane. Now the next step in this project, it's going to require a little bit of thought, a little bit of that think tank engineering type of stuff. Keep in mind, one of the things a Spitfire has is a scoop that goes over the bottom, maybe from here to the middle of the wing. Has the radiators. One of the things I want to do is engineer up a little bit different outlet, air outlet ducting here. But keep in mind, one of the reasons, if you ever hear people talk about Super Tiger 60s and they say, oh, that Super Tiger 60, not a good motor, or in some cases they don't even know because they haven't tried it. What they're probably telling you is they don't know how to build a plane with a strong nose section. And anybody that can't get a Super Tiger 60 to run is an idiot, period. It means they don't know how to get, it's like saying you don't know how to drive a Chevy V8. Wait a minute. What it requires is rigid nose construction. Now one of the things I'm doing, I laid the tank out. What I did, think tank stuff. I laid in 2/4 inch shims. That's about the most I ever would anticipate having to move the tank. Took out my stock tank, my whatever you want to call it. It's still full of fuel. Now what I want to do is I want to measure up in the back where this tank is going to, this may take a little bit of, I'm trying to do this on the macro, measure down to the floor, and you can see I put a little bit of tape on a ruler so I don't go losing that measurement. Now the idea here is I want to make, you see the slop side to side on the tank, there's room in there. Well, if there's room and you're going to put a tank shim in, it's ridiculous not to glue it in, so we may as well glue it in. But what I want to do is get balsa wood, and I want to get it end grain with the grain going straight up and down. Very, very important. If the grain was to go front to back, useless. It'll do almost no good at all. Grain straight up and back. So now I have that measurement on the ruler. With that measurement I can make up a strip of end grain balsa, the thickness that I need to keep that tank in nice and solid. And instead of just going along for the ride, it'll become part of the fuselage structure. So that's the next step in figuring out how I want to do this. Now one of the most efficient materials in the whole world is this 64th plywood O-Pee-Chee wood. Notice the grain straight up and down. Now I'll also take the balsa wood, strip off some pieces the same thickness. So in effect I have a skinned piece. It's 64th plywood on the outside and half the thickness of the material that we want to put on a tank on the other side. Now see, I have that thickness measured on a machinist ruler, and I can just put a dot here, and I can take the T-square and I can strip off real nice symmetrical pieces, and I'll have in effect end grain balsa with a veneer of 64th plywood. I just want just enough thickness that I can get the tank in and out. That's all I want. Now one little time saver here will be, as I'm making up the side plates for one fuselage, it'll be very easy. I'll just make up extra parts, which is what I'm doing right now. So in effect, when I go to do the second fuselage, I'll have all the parts cut out. Or if you were going to make a plane in the near future, say you were making an Nobler and you're going to 6 months or later or a year from now make another one, or if your friend's making one, cut out the parts ahead of time. Very easy to make the second set of parts. I'm trying to maintain a nice edge on the top here. I don't know how successful this is going to be. Let it kick off automatically. Now because I have this dimension, I can just make myself up all the parts that I'm going to need. I'll strip off another piece, but always sure that the grain is going straight up and down. Very, very important. And I can make I have some of the parts already cut out for the second fuselage. Now I'm just going to strip this off real carefully and get a nice clean edge on it. I'll be ready to make up my tank shims. Side tank shims. I'm just doing a dry fit to make sure I have all the corners at 90 degrees, make sure this fits right in there. And even coming up over the pad at least temporarily till I lay this out. And I'll just replicate this part again. Now you can see what really happens. It makes a little ledge in here. Now I can make a tank floor that'll just drop right in position with no work at all. It'll be perfectly aligned. I have all the benefits of end grain wood and all the benefits of having 64th plywood inside the tank box. So the whole inside of the tank box is 64th plywood here. And if you don't think that matters, you start putting balsa shims in and eventually the tank gets wiggly and oh man, this is really the way to do it. Again, this is one of the reasons a lot of people that say, oh, you can't run a Super Tiger 60 or they can't figure out how to get it to 2.4. They don't take advantage of all the technology that Jim Greenaway has come up with. If you take advantage of it, this almost guarantees you're going to get a motor run. It's a given. I want to seal all that end grain. Run a bead on all the corners. Remember, in box construction, it's the corners that need to be solid and rigid. Anything you want to make rigid, triangulate the corners or make the corners solid. In this case, a nice shot with the Q-tips is a big help. A little bit of that lint kicks it off nice and slow. You've got a rock solid joint. Now the idea here is the tank can't slide around, slop around. And all of the stuff that would normally be loose side shims is another thing that's important. Remember, it's always important to keep the tank right in the center of the body. You don't want it off to one side or the other or cocked in any way, or else you get these inefficient motor runs. Now all I need to know now is the length I want to have, and I don't know the final length yet because I have to be able to slide the tank in and out. So before I make a decision on that, let me see what width I want this tank shim to be. And I want it to be the same front and back, so I'll just use the tri-square to make up all the angles 90 degrees. And I can just lay this shim out on the plywood. I want to make sure all the angles are 90 degrees too. And I'll make it just a couple of thousandths oversized so I can sand it and get it a nice tight fit in there. I'll start off by making the shim 6 inches long, but I think I'm going to trim it back. So I know now all these angles are 90 degrees, grain going side to side. That is just a little dry fit here. I know I have the piece. I can squeeze that and it's just perfect. That's just an interference fit, just nice. Now what I want to do, I want to turn this piece into balsa plywood, just like we did on the back bulkhead, grain going corner to corner. So the first step is going to be, I'll lay this piece out. And I know I'm not going to get this all out of one piece. Remember that old thing, corner to corner. And we're just going to make this piece into the same material that we used to make that bulkhead, actually make up F2. And we'll run a joint right down the middle. Now I can just use the same. I have half of the balsa on here. I don't even have to fool around making it up again. Corner to corner. Get the grain corner to corner. Be very strong. Now the next laminate, I'll put the grain going from this corner to this corner. So I'm just going back and forth now with the same old technology, back and forth. And boy, does this ever work. This is just, we'll make 4 laminations of this. And just connect the corners. Now I put a little dot just so I'd know not to put the shim in upside down or front to back, because it really is, you can see how tight of a fit it is. It's a tight, very tight fit. Now I need to fit the tank, make sure I can get the tank in and out over the nose ring, or make an adjustment somewhere. Now with this down in position, I'm sliding the tank in, and you'll see what'll happen. This is a 6-ounce tank. A 5-ounce tank could probably go in, but I want to have the option of using a 6-ounce. So what I need to do, you see how this is raising up? I need to take some of that material out of there, just enough that I can drop the tank in. And from this, it looks like, well, it looks like an easier way is going to be, I'm just going to trim this back just enough that I can get the tank in and out. So I'll take a 1/4 of an inch off of this and see how that works. Now what I did, I made a little relief on the bottom of the tank shim so that the tank can slide right in. What this allows me to do is get the tank shim as far forward as possible, adding some rigidity to the body at the same time. Now I can see I'm having an interference fit. Let me make sure it's on here and not on. And I'm not hitting the tubing here because okay. There's a little interference there, and I can just put a little mark on. See, now this will leave a little mark where this is hitting. And I'll go down and I'll just take a little more of this off. Okay, now I know I can get the tank in and out. And that's the main thing, without hanging up on that shim. Now I can glue this tank floor in permanently. And that'll probably end this session. I see it's time. Back to the doctor again today. Getting so sick of this. Now, of course, anytime you make ball supply parts, you get a nice fit. And let all of the glue soak in end grain, each side. Very important to do this. I don't want to leave this step out, even though I'm kind of finished for the day here. And I just want to go on each side. No kicker, of course. Then just kiss this with a sanding block. I can put this in position, hit it with some thin CA, and boy, that'll just be in there like a rock. Hey, that CA should seal up the wood so we don't have oil getting in here in time. This is ready to go back. I don't want to take any material off, I just want to get a nice CA edge. Boy, is that a nice tight fit. Beautiful fit. Get it nice and tight. Squeeze it. And then what we'll do is pick this up and seal it from the inside where the fuel tank is also. We'll seal it in both dimensions. You just let this dry up first. And then we'll roll that inside and that should seal that tank box up beautifully. Okay, with that dry, the last step, and this is going to be it for right now, is I want to drop some, just let it run right in there. So I have a nice puddle at the back, and I let it go around in each corner, in each dimension. I let it come forward. Whoop, I see it coming out. Roll around in this corner, let it come till it almost comes out. And just let that kick. Let that kick off without any kicker, and then we'll be all set. Now obviously next time we get to work on this, we'll just replicate all these parts in on the other side and make sure the tank fits on that side also. See you next time. Hey, I gotta tell you, I'm just so happy. Just got back from the doctor. Good news. Oh, go away. Good news, I gotta show everybody my Band-Aid. They stuck needles in my throat. Oh, it was horrible. Anyway, serious. Good news. Good news first. My cholesterol is down. It means I can eat even more pizza. Now, I won't have the results of the biopsy for a couple of weeks, but we don't care about that right now. We're building Spitfires. And I just got the most wonderful news I have ever heard, and I'm passing this on to everybody. I assume there's a lot of 50-year-olds, 45-year-olds watch the tapes. This is a serious thing. I was just back from the doctor, and they just released the results of a test for people with, and I have my own little prostate problem. They have determined that people that eat tomatoes, cooked tomatoes and or tomato sauce more than 4 times a week have roughly a 1/4 less chance of developing prostate cancer. And that is, to me, man, that's the best news. I'm so happy, it's unbelievable. But anyway, just shows you all along, eating all this pizza, hey, that's the way to go. Anyway, that I did get some encouraging news, and just can't tell you how happy I am. I'm really relieved to know this, that I'm going to live another 2 weeks or whatever. And this Band-Aid, I'm walking around, everybody's feeling sorry for me and stuff. Oh, the poor baby. When Karen had cut her eye a couple of years ago, and she had a patch, a big white patch for about, about a month, I guess. What I had done is the day we went back to the doctor to have that patch taken off, I took an ink marker and drew a big awful eye with red lines going through it. When she walked into the waiting room, of course, there's 50 other people with patches. Ah! Anyway, this is such good news. Tomorrow I'll be all revved up to go back to Spitfireville. He lives. I'm going to live another 2 years. Oh, I'm so happy. See, this is what you don't know when you live in Jersey. You get up early in the morning. I figure, get a whole good day of work on a Spitfire. And I'm going to get a half a day of shoveling cars out in snow and a half a day of working on a Spitfire. So, disgusting stuff. Now today, I'm just looking over yesterday's work. Give myself a minute to think if there's anything I want to change or improve or whatever. I think one of the things I could think about improving is maybe raising the tank shim up on the second body, maybe a 1/16 of an inch. And I could get rid of some of that overhang, but I don't think it's going to even be critical. You know, the idea is I like to think in between sessions, or at least I had plenty of time yesterday to think about it. Anything I can do to make this a little bit better or lighter or whatever, but I think that's going to be just a case of replicating the whole thing out. I don't even think I'll add the 1/16 of an inch. You know, here's what's nice is I have the piece made. I made all the notes on it for the first fuselage, so now I can work right off the notes. And actually, I could send this to Martens. This would be a I gotta write on here what it is. If you keep track of this stuff, somewhere down the road it pays off. Somewhere down the road. You never know exactly where it's going to pay off. Now I'll just make these parts. I know this is what I want to have. In fact, I decided not to add the 1/16 of an inch so that the two fuses will be exactly the same. And what I can do here is I can just lay out one right on top of the other. Since I already have this made up, it'll be very easy to replicate the parts. Now I'm just doing a final fit. What I did, I made this tank box just a little bit shorter on the sides. I don't know how much of an improvement that's going to be, but as we work on the nose, we'll see. Always a good idea to leave the dust on here, because the dust, when you go to put the CA on there, the dust helps kick it off inside the joint. This BALSA ply is great stuff, by the way. Now I wound up, after fitting this, having to put in pretty much the same little recess here. Okay, perfect. Make sure you seal those edges, always. Now the last thing is I want to hit all of these joints from the inside as I did on the other one. Make sure the glue goes all the way to the back. And then I just walk it around. Yep. As soon as it comes up by the mount, stop. Yep. Right by the mount. Let it walk around that whole bulkhead, make a nice fillet. As soon as I see it coming up the front, whoop, back down this way. Perfect. Now the next thing I have to do is start working on how I want to run my ducting out the bottom here. So I'm just going to make up what amounts to be a dummy former, just to hold everything in place while I work the logistics out here. Now I'm just trying to figure out exactly what I want to do here with this ducting. I'm making up a little pattern, and of course I want it to be a tight fit. I want to follow the COWL line. It's a nice tight fit. Now because this is in on a geodetic angle, it roughly mirrors, not roughly, it exactly mirrors the COWL opening. I would think we're going to have a little extra strength just from the fact the formers are geodetic. We'll gain a little strength that way. Now I want to make up some balsa plywood, grain going corner to corner. Now keep in mind, this piece is not the final piece. There'll be another piece on top of this, but just so we have some rigidity in a fuse while we're working on it. Now what I do is I add the laminations. I'm checking for 90 degrees. I want to make sure all of these angled. This one isn't. Now I'm trying to get that exact cowl angle ground into both sides. It's just a question of going back and fitting it, dry fitting it, back and forth. Now I pre-glued all these edges and I'm just sanding out the hard edges. This all has CA on all the edges. And I want to do my little dry fit. I want this to be a really, really tight fit here. I don't want it to spread, but I don't want it to have any slop either. And that's about as tight as you're going to get it. And I want to replicate that cowl angle relatively closely. It doesn't have to be right on the money, but close anyway. And I want to be even here because I'm going to put cross grain wood in here. Okay, the part is in there. It fits as tight as we're ever going to get it. As always, just hold it tight, rub it with Q-tips, that'll kick it off, gives you that nice bead. Then we'll turn this over. I'm going to hold this up on its nose and let the glue just run into all these inside seams. Now what I want to do, holding it straight down, the same thing, let the glue do the work. And just rock it back and forth. Now I want to make up a piece of cross grain here. Grain going side to side. Make up a pattern. Now this just takes a little bit of back and forth dry fitting to get this just right. Just a little bit more off. I've really tried to get a really nice tight fit on this. Phew! Oh, this stuff stinks. Alright, that's fairly nice now. Okay, with both of these guys ready now. Now I have to sit down, carefully figure out exactly what I want to do as far as the bottom block goes. Now one of the things you can do is tell President Nixon to hang up. All right, Nixon, I'll be right there. Hang on. Anyway, back to the Spitfires here. That Nixon, he keeps coming up out of the grave to get me. One of the things I want to make sure is, number one, I'm going to put the two fuselages top, and I've already done this, to make sure that they're relatively close to being exactly the same, width all along the way. I'm sure there's a little bit of variation we could withstand, but we don't want to withstand, an inch, let's say. Now, I've been thinking about a lot of different ways of doing this, and one of the things is, I guess from this point on in the video, be prepared to see some things that maybe I planned wouldn't work out, or maybe some of the things that I had brilliant ideas, like all space shuttles. You never really know until you give it a try, and then if you don't try it, you never really know. Anyway, we will be doing some experimenting within the next couple of tapes. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for not a really good block, a relatively crappy block to be the bottom block. I want to go up to the Martin's drawing now, carefully measure the thickness of the drawing. Now, in fact, I ought to do this on a storyboard. You see, he's left out the line on the bottom that connects the bottom. He did it for a reason, is we haven't made a final, I still have to talk to Adamusko, a final feeling of what that bottom thickness will be. But I'm going to make that determination sometime this afternoon, because I'd like to do a little bit of work on this, the little bit of time I have left, before I have to go out and shovel some more. So, you know what the easiest way is? And I'm always trying to figure out how to get this kind of information on tape. Let me do a little quick storyboard of what I'm talking about here. Well, one of the things I've learned over the years, and I'm going to storyboard this out because this is such a significant thing, you only will really screw this up one time in your lifetime and you'll never do it again. I'm going to draw up a little plane, little side view, typical Nobler. Now, if you reference off the center of the wing, just as an example, okay, I've built planes that were the same thickness here as they were here. Killer B was one good example. And what would happen is, as the plane is flying, the plane doesn't really fly as level as you think it does. It's always on a little bit of an angle up. So what would happen is, and I just want to use this for a reference. Maybe this would be the easiest way to do it. I've been trying to think of it. Is when you're flying a plane, it would always look to me like it was flying like that. And it wasn't the plane. It was the fact it didn't have enough upsweep in the back of the body. Now, with Greenaway and several other people that have judged the Nationals have told me those early planes, those Killer Bs, and always looked like they were dragging their ass in level flight. And I've noticed other people who design planes that have a flat fuselage bottom where it's the same thickness at the back as the front. When you reference off the, they always look like they're flying like that, even though they're not. They don't fly like that. It just looks like that. So what we've come up with is a relative number on a PM size plane of a 1/2 inch of taper. Now, a 1/2 inch of taper means it's whatever this thickness is in the front of the body side. Take the body side itself. Up in the front, if it's 3 inches, it's 2.5 back here. It's a 1/2 inch less in the back. Significant. Now, what I've done, and I've noticed other people have done the same thing. Many planes I've done, I've just cut the back off the plane. And if you go look at Tradition and you go look at the green plane over here, I've already done that. I've already taken. By the way, let me do that right now. Hang on. Don't even want to shut the camera off here, because this is significant stuff. If you look over at the rudder, and I'm sorry if this footage isn't good, you see how it'll taper up in the back? Well, that was not that way when it was built. It was straight out to a point. Okay, if you look at Strega, it tapers up. It tapers up a 1/2 inch. Tsunami tapers up a little more than a 1/2 inch because we allow for that bottom block. It's that taper up This T-Bird, I don't even know. That's Aaronstein's plane. But it's that tapering up. I don't want to have this kind of thing where I'm trying to swing it all into the last quarter of an inch. I want to have the taper built into the bottom of the ship. And this is very significant now because I want to make a mold. I don't want to have to go back and recarve and reshape a mold. I want to make one mold and have it for the, for all eternity. So excuse the rough camera work yet. Trying to make a real valid point. This significant half-inch taper up is very important. Now, when you have a flat fuselage bottom like a Cardinal, a half-inch is exactly right. It looks right in level flight. All of the Cardinals that have a half-inch taper up, they look perfect. Here's the problem you run into. When you have a bottom block, when you lay out the fuse side, you could taper the fuse side up a half an inch. Now the block, let's say the block is the same thickness front to back. In the back, in the front, it'll have this kind of a cross section, and in the back, it'll look like this by the tail wheel. So from front to back, what happens is right along in here, you get a funny kind of curvature. It transitions very funny from this to that. So to avoid that, what I want to have is, rather than tapering from this to this, that's what I want to avoid, I want to have it taper, and I've only put a quarter of an inch of angle up, but I want the block to go a quarter of an inch. So I'm going to wind up with that. So now my cross section for the mold and for the bottom block should be very consistent. In other words, I'd like to have a roughly little lemon slice or pie slice, the whole thing have that curvature. And this is so significant a design thing, it's taken me many, many years to figure out, why does this happen? This would make me crazy years ago. I'd fly the plane and everybody'd say, yeah, it's not in flying level. Or in your square pullouts, it'd look like this on the pullout. Well, having this half-inch taper is so significant. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay out the bottom block so that the front of the bottom block, when I get from the front to the back, I add another quarter of an inch so that the fuse side will have a quarter inch of taper, or maybe even a little more. A little more seems okay. It never seems like it's a problem having too much, only when you don't have enough. And I want to have the block, rather than go from a constant thickness, I want to go from the front thickness, and I'm going to take it off of Martens's plans, and then go down so that I keep that curvature. And that is a significant thing, because I'm going to put a lot of time into making this mold, and once I make this mold, I don't want to have to go back and recarve, reshape. I want to be able to mold bottom blocks one right after another, and do it anytime I build a plane like this, be able to use the same mold. Now I went through my blocks, and needless to say, not many 4-pound blocks in there. And what I'm going to do is trace this out just a little bit oversized. And I'll leave the pen line on for the initial carving. I'm thinking the easiest way to do this is to make it a little bit oversized to begin with and then trim it to fit. But after I make one or two of these, I may know more. Keep in mind that same old adage about experimenting. If you just accept the status quo, well, that's kind of cool. And probably from a competition point of view, you'll do fine. That's a good way to build a competitive plane, but I get my kicks doing stuff like this. Okay, I've laid that out, and that's the bottom view of the fuselage. Now I'll take that in and rip that off on the saw. Now I want to cut this, but I want to leave the line on. Now because the block isn't long enough, I need to put a little piece on the tail, and I'm just measuring this out now. I need to figure roughly I need about an inch piece back here. Now leave myself just a little extra here and leave the line on. I've tried to leave the line on for the whole operation here so far. I just make sure I have a good fit here. Have a little meat left over. Get that joint smoothed out. Now when I lay this out, I'm going to leave the sanding dust on here. Sanding it, but leave the sanding dust on. That'll help kick off the CA. Now I just want to go down and tack this little by little. Now the reason I have all those extra formers in here is just so at this point in time I don't have a big flimsy thing that every time you touch it you break it or put a crack in it. Maybe every 6 inches a dot of CA. Now, what I always like to do is if I'm going to carve a big piece like this, brand new blade. Brand new blade. You save money on blades, you waste your whole time, and you're wasting the wood, the time, everything. Brand new blade and a knife. That's the best way to start off any carving project. I also like when I have one of these big 26 blades to tighten them with a pair of pliers. Because I've had the blade and make a mess out of my block at many times. Now I want to lay this out. I want to start with that curve up here, and it's going to gradually taper, a constant taper. But I want to also get in that side view where I have a 1/4 inch or so of taper. Keep in mind, we're not talking about a 1/16 of an inch, but roughly a 1/4 of an inch of taper, roughly a 1/4 of an inch of taper in a fuse side, and maybe a little more. And I want to make a nice blend. I don't want to have all straight lines. Spitfire has a lot of curves, so the first thing I can do is actually at the back here, I can start lopping off some of the material here and just in big chunks, just to get it off. And you know you're going to take all the corners off so you can... Now, another trick. I'm trying to get all the little things that have helped me carve. You never want to carve if you possibly can help it from the back of the block to the front unless the grain is good. You don't want to carve into the grain. You want to carve with the grain. Now the grain is kind of bending out this way. So on this side, particularly on this side, I want to do all the carving front to back. If the grain were to bow this way, I still want to go, because I have a taper in it, unless the grain is going at some crazy angle or you have a lousy piece of wood. This looks reasonable even though it's not a light piece of wood. The whole deal here is to try to get as much of the big stuff, and I'm just looking at this in my mind, trying to get the corners off, and then use your hand to kind of feel all the way down, little by little. It's really just a matter of doing it. Now once I get the roughing done, this is not even rough, it's almost rough. I want to get some tape along the fuselage side because as I get closer and closer to where I want to wind up, I don't want the knife to gouge into these fuse sides. Remember, I have the fuse sides thinned at the back. A lot of taper put in these. And all that work of thinning things out, I don't want to take a big knife gouge out. So this will just be to protect the knife, and if I cut into the tape, I know it's time to stop. Even get near the tape, it's time to stop. Another thing too, things that'll help you get nice carving done, always rough it out first. Take small pieces. In the beginning you can take big chunks like this, but later on you just want to take thin shavings like bologna slices. And then we'll try out that plane that we always seem to wind up using on these kind of projects. That master ass screw plane. Boy, if you don't have one of them, run out and spend $5 and get one. They are an excellent tool for carving. And then we're going to put the taper in the front last. I'll leave that for last. But right now I just want to rough this out the rest of the way and get as close to the fuse side as I can. Now one of the things I've run into, and I wanted to just put this on a video, I have some really crazy grain here. The grain is going along and all of a sudden it goes off. When you get to and it's like a hard spot. When you get to a spot like that, the answer is just take very tiny, thin, paper-thin cuts. Because as soon as you get the blade cut in there, the grain grabs it and it wants to go off. I have that one bad spot here. Now if we were going to use this block, you know, I would really have to be careful when I hollow it out. That grain, there must be a branch of a tree growing here or a squirrel's house or something. Yeah, I've tried to make the most of that. That grain just goes crazy. Okay, we're about, Jesus, look at all stuff. We're about at the end of roughing this out, and then I want to switch over to the master air screw plant. But what I do is I just feel with my hand where I have high spots. Here's one right here. And trying to avoid that grain. That grain is, whew, boy, there's a wicked hook in this block. I've just been taking off nice paper thin slivers here, trying to keep the knife from going in. And see, the nice thing about the plane is the plane doesn't dive into the grain. And you can do the final shaping with the plane, and then even finer than that with a sanding block, that nice big sanding block. Just takes a little practice. There's a nice thing about carving up a block, if you're not happy the way it comes out, take a razor, cut it off, go get another one. You're not committed here until you glue it on. And obviously you want to go right out, put a brand new blade in. Don't even fool around with the old blade, even if it's only been used a little bit. Now, if you're not familiar with how a plane works, you just want to have the least little bit of the blade. This blade, you can see this is chewed up. That's what they were using on Big Tsunami. The least little bit of the blade sticking out is plenty. And again, don't be cheap with blades. They're like razor blades. You fool around trying to use the same blade for 6 years, you wind up wasting a lot of time and energy. And these things are sharp. These are the master air screw blades. You want to have just enough of this sticking out, just the least little bit sticking out. Now see, these two screws, let's drop the blade in here. These two screws control the cut. So now you want to set the blade in so the back of the blade is just hitting the screws. Drop the blade right back in there. Take a couple of test cuts on a piece of scrap wood. Usually once you set it though, it'll stay set for a long time. But if you wanted more blade, you could thread these in, or less blade. You just want just enough that it's, oh boy, just the slightest little bit sticking through there. You can do a little test. Another thing too, whenever you hold a plane, if you hold it straight, you don't get good cuts. You hold it on an angle, see how that angle is? Hold it on an angle, you'll get real nice cuts. And this isn't even good wood and it's cutting nice. Now a couple of tricks that I found using a plane. I'm trying to contain, I hope this is another tip you can use, contain all the scraps on a blanket, then at the end of the day I can kind of dump it out all at once. Wish I could just take it over in the neighbor's yard, dump it in the snow, but it's not going to work. Anyway, with the plane, if you find out if you use, well, I don't want to start on that side. If you use just a slight angle and go slow, you'll put a nice contour in. If possible, I'd like to avoid that glue joint. That's going to take its toll on a blade if I keep cutting into that glue joint. You know you're getting real good when you get one big shaving off all at once. Now that's telling you that you're really getting a nice cut here. And the plane, just like a sanding block, will pick up all the high spots. I see from carbon there's all low spots here. It isn't picking up. Now if I'm getting too much of a cut, I can back the blade back up into the plane just a little bit. At some point in time, this is why I have all these formers in here, I want it to be able to grab it better. At some point in time, you can just do this, and you'll just get a paper thin cut each time, and you'll get a real nice contour. And then we'll finish this up with a sanding block. It really isn't as hard as it looks, as long as you have the right tools. You can make some pretty exotic shapes without a lot of work. Now, I know that grain there. I'm trying to go real gingerly back there. I don't want to get anywhere near the tape. I'll get the last little bit off with the sanding block. And I'll try to stay away from that glue joint. What I'm trying to achieve here is to get a nice smooth curve in the whole thing. Oh boy, this stuff just goes everywhere. I'm trying to keep it off the floor too. At some point in time though, you can just do this. And you can really remove material in a hurry. When you have super light wood, it'll go a lot faster. Piece of wood like this, which isn't really a good piece of wood, I have to be careful on. I remember one time Midgley was carving a bottom block or a top block. We went behind my garage, and there was a Jeff's motorcycle was back there, and he buried the motorcycle in balsa chips. You make so much chips, though, it's a pain in the neck. Now, when the shavings start coming off in a real smooth, little tiny pieces, then I can even back the plane out just a little more and just be taking paper slices off. This is a great tool, by the way. You can get it from SIG. It's a master ass screw plane. It'll make carbon a lot easier than if you don't have it. And I want to really lay this up on a drawing and see how far I have to go yet. We're sneaking up on having the right... I'm going to get rid of some of these chips. Get rid of all these chips. Anyway, you can see we got this roughed in. I'm almost up to the tape, and I want to take the last little bit out with a sanding block. I'll start with a big block and work down to a fine one. The best tool you have for finding high spots is your hand, and I can find some on here. Of course, the angle is all little plane angles, but I'm going to just try to get the rest of this done with the sanding block. I'll use the vacuum machine, of course. I don't know if you're able to see just how how rough this is from the macro lens. Anyway, it's about ready for sanding. I'd say that's about as close as I'm going to get it. So what I'm doing, I'm just rotating the fuselage very slowly, and as I'm doing it, so maintaining the same arc with the block. This usually gives you a nice blend. Of course, the nice thing here is you're not breathing in all this dust. As soon as you feel the tape coming up, that's it. And just constantly rotating the block makes it go relatively quickly. course, the longer the sanding block, the smoother of a curve you'll get in it. You don't want to do any sanding by hand on a block this long. This sanding bench is the best invention I've ever seen. It's unbelievable how good this works. And next thing is I want to remove the tape, and that should give me a little bit of variance, a little clearance here. Now I'm just comparing it to Martens's plan to make sure I have the right curves and contours that I want. Before I pull this off, the next step will be I'll get a new razor, pop all these seams, and pull this block off. Now what I do as I start at the front and make the cut, just pry the block away, and a lot of times the joints they'll break or just pop. A brand new 11 blade or a double edge razor is even better. Okay. Now I want to true this bottom up. You always get these little lumps of whatever from the CA joint, so let me just turn this on. Now I just want to get a flat surface on the bottom of this block too. In fact, the sanding block's getting a little shot right now. Just pick up all the rough edges. Now it would be nice if we could use this piece for the mold. It's unfortunately the thickness of the piece we're going to mold oversized, so what I have to do is decide how big of a, I'm going to assume it's going to be around 1/8 of an inch, and what I need to do is remove 1/8 of an inch of material off of here, and I need to do it evenly if possible. So I have the piece to start with. What I'm going to do is take that, wherever that red pen walks off to all the time, and just like I do other operations, run that line right down it and give myself 1/8 of an inch, and I know that's got to go. Otherwise I'll never be able to, every piece I make will be really oversized. Now I thought of a couple of things. I thought of, first off, trying to use this piece and then trim each piece down. I don't know that that would or wouldn't work, because of course this is my first time through. So I'm trying to find all the shortcuts, and I'm trying to be realistic about it, make it that it's a procedure that pretty much anybody can use. And this may get so thin at the back that I'll have to use a little block back by the tail wheel. I don't know yet. But this is going to give me the 1/8 of an inch that I know I have to remove. There's no way I can avoid removing this. Machine on with the dust removal thing on, and block sand this out to where I have a real nice, and all the while I'm doing it, just constantly monitor that I don't have any high spots or low spots or whatever. Now normally if I was going to use this block right now, I'd have to go through that whole routine of hollowing it out. It's almost quicker, assuming this is all going to work the way I want, which we haven't seen yet, by the way. It would be nice to know you didn't have to even hollow this out. The job of making the top block is probably quicker than doing all the hollowing out, and probably results in a block that's lighter. Let's hope, let's hope. You never really know though. Now this is just 100 grit paper. This is just rough, nasty paper. Just getting this roughed out. Then I want to go over and test fit it onto the actual crutch. What's significant here is I want to keep this edge 90 degrees. I don't want this edge to kind of pancake out into a triangle. Goes kind of quick, and then I'll just have to do my dry fits until I'm happy that I'm about an 1/8 inch undersize. I'm finalizing this shape here, and what I'm going to have to do is find a piece of some of those great top blocks that you always buy that come out too heavy to use, so I can make a support for this. I'm going to need a support. You couldn't wrap sheeting around here and grab this. You'd need some kind of support, so I want to glue this to a support. Now it looks like I've got just about the amount of undersize I want here. In fact, I have a little more than I want. So what I'm going to try to, what I'm trying to allow for is the springiness of the wood. Because when you mold this, you're going to take it off, it's going to do that. So what I'll do is look through that old balsa wood and try to find a nice piece of maybe a 1-inch top block, something I can make a mount. Actually, you could use a 2x4. I just don't happen to have any, I don't have any wood around here, any decent 2x4s. Okay, there's a great piece of 14-pound balsa wood here. And what I'm going to do, I got to make a little piece up for the back. I'm just going to actually just tack glue this piece right on. Now I want to put a red line on here first because I'm going to saw this right off, and I'll have the line to reference my great eagle eyesight. Once I put CA on a block, forget it. Remember, what this is here for is to keep the block rigid while we're making a molded part. Craig just came, funny, Craig just came home from lunch and told me it's still snowing out there. Oh man, just what I need. Right in the middle of Spitfire production, we got to go into snow mode. Okay, now I'm going to just run a bead on this. This is a permanent thing now. Let each 6 inches go. Actually, not a critical joint. This block isn't going to go anywhere, I don't think. But I think that red line on there will be a big help. Hey, I'm just thinking of something. Before the day's over here, we're going to have a molded part in the mold. Let's see if any of this is going to be worth doing. And if it isn't, you don't think I'm going to erase the tape? Forget it. Tape will stay there, and I'll hollow out the block and then carve another block. You never admit you're wrong. That's the whole deal. Okay, I put that little tail piece on there. Everything is C8 on here. Now I just got to go over to the saw and rip this off perfectly parallel to the block. I don't want to have an angle out or an angle in. I'd like to have a perfectly flat transition when I'm done. So I just want to make sure I'm not I want to keep that angle at 90 degrees. And the easiest way I found, just go through the old Delta saw. Go through nice and slow. Real slow is the ticket. Don't try to push it through because it follows the grain. Again, more of a pain in the neck here with the grain. Now with the dust bench on, the dust goes right down into the bin. It's really handy. Now the next step, and I don't know which way I'm going to finally use, but I want to try this way. I'm putting a piece of 30-second wire right on the glue joint. So when I do mold this, this will leave an impression in the inside of the mold, and it'll give me a parting line. It'll let me know where I can trim the molded part, because the piece will have to be molded oversize. And what I'm doing, I'm just CAing this right into the little joint. Now I also thought of another thing. If I make this and it comes out a little bit too small, which I did make this mold a little bit on the small side, I can wrap this with a piece of 32nd and then put the 1/8 inch right on top of it, and then when I'm all done, throw the piece of 32nd away. So in effect, I can have like nesting jars. I can really use this to make more than one part. So we'll find out. Again, this is a learning curve, and I'm trying to share it with you and let you see just the what goes on in my mind. And even if we fail, it's not a problem. You know, anybody that's afraid to admit they make a mistake once in a while, forget it anyway. You're never going to go anywhere. This is the real world where things don't always go right. Again, the only purpose of this wire here, the purpose is so that I can have a little line and impression inside my piece of 1/8 inch wood. Now before I actually get ready to use this mold, I just want to dress off this edge where the CA was on here with a little sanding block. I don't want to have a big lump of CA because it's going to take the impression of anything that's on here. Now, from my molding experience is really minimal. I've done the leading edges on a tweener and on a Harley. A couple other little minor parts, but no major stuff. Midgley has done leading edges. Adamusco's done leading edges. I know Frank McMillan, Al Ray, Billy Werwidge, I'm sure Paul Walker's done it too. Nothing new here. This is not like I'm trying to reinvent the wheel or anything. But what I am trying to do is I'm trying to figure out the best way now I can do this. One of my choices is going to be, as I said, since this block is a little bit undersized, I can take a piece of 30-second sheeting, wet it and wrap it around, and then put the 1/8 inch right on top. That's one choice. The only problem is I only have one ace bandage here. I may have to go to the store and buy another ace bandage. I really didn't think I'd get this done today, but it is one of the choices is I can put 2 pieces of 30-second on here, 3 pieces, 4. I can make this constantly grow and constantly go down, and then just either use or throw the other pieces away. The only thing I can't do is undersize pieces. I can't take the mold and squeeze the pieces tighter. So my feeling all along was, well, maybe I went too far and made this a little bit too small, but again, the wood always seems to spring back a little. And again, because we're in this learning curve here, I'm probably going to have to run a few of these off before I get a couple of good ones, one for Joe and one for myself. But first off, I got to go see. I don't even know if I have any ammonia. I didn't think I'd get this done today. I need ammonia or Windex or water. You obviously could use water. And then I need a couple ace bandages, and I think I only have one over there. Now obviously in looking through this wood, this is 32nd wood. I can use up a piece, the heaviest, most twisted up piece I have. And these are all grain scaled out already. This one looks good and crappy. Be nice if it was as long. Well, I'm going to have to put a little piece at the end, or put some tape at the end or something. That's not going to make it. What this will also allow me to do, I just thought of another thing. I can, wow, I'm going to be able to do this with a 3-inch piece of wood. I thought maybe I'd need 4-inch. Okay, so much for that. In fact, I'm going to take 2 of these. I'm going to be a big spender. This will give me a 1/16 of an inch overage, and I'm about 3/32 too small. Now what I want to try as the first experiment, of course there's no rush on any of this, I'll have plenty of time to experiment. I took out some ammonia that was in the washing room, and I hope this is, yeah, it's real ammonia. Woo! Actually, if you don't want to use the ammonia, Windex seems to work, water seems to work, hot water seems to work even better. But you really have to get the part soaked down, and it has to be A-grain wood. You really can't make a nice part. This is 3/32 wood. I'm going to try to be a hero here and try to make one out of 3/32 wood. Nice A-grain. The only problem is it's about 2 inches too short, so if I do use this, I'll have to use that little block in the back by the tail wheel, but I'm not even going to consider that a factor yet. You need to really get the part wet. Soaked, you can't rush off and bend it. It will not bend. Same thing if you make leading edges, you just, this stuff stinks to holy hell. In fact, I'll put the thing on. Somebody's fumes out of here. And of course your hands will smell nice, your underwear, everything is going to smell nice at the end of this session. But this will be a test. I really didn't have a good piece of 1/8 inch to try. I wanted to just try this first, see what we come out with, and I can do a test fit, and then I can either make the part bigger or smaller. Let that soak for a minute, and then I'll go over there and just wrap it up. If you had a bathtub, it's, oh yeah, that's getting nice and soft. The wood cells get soaked, and then we'll put this up by a heating vent and see if we can get this to dry before the next session. Then if we need to make it a little bigger, we can put the piece of 32nd underneath. We can put 2 pieces under. We have all kind of choices here, but let's get a test piece made up first. Now I found this is the only ace bandage in the whole house. I can't believe it. Damarel's got 8,000 ace bandages. And this is kind of a stick-to-itself thing. By now you really can't tell in the video, but it stinks. This house smells like ammonia. Oh God, Karen is going to have a puppy when she comes home. These will be my shims should I need them later on, but for right now I want to run this piece over. It looks like a 3-inch piece of wood will make us a bottom block here. To give myself a little extra, I want to get it right to the edge because now the trick is, at least if this is going to work the way I anticipate, you need to get one piece wrapped around here first. You want to try to keep the bandage flat if you can. I'm not going to go back and erase the tape. See, the idea is I want everybody to like share the experience here. In any kind of learning thing, you can't look to be Mr. Macho. You got to look to really. Now I'm just stretching this as tight as I can, wrapping it around. Okay, make sure the tail isn't coming off. I may have to go buy another ace bandage here. Take the twists out of the ace bandage. I don't know if you can see how this is progressing here. And actually, I'm down onto the wire, so the wood is wide enough. Now I'm starting to walk off to one side, so let me just kind of roll this if I can. Get some kind of technique for this going. And just think, every time you can mold a block, assuming we get this figured out, good top blocks now are going for about 40 bucks. A nice 4-pound block, easily 40 bucks. So once this mold is made, you're looking at quite a bit of money actually. And it also lets me mold blocks up for other people. That's the other thing too. There's other people, including Casminato, going to be building a Spitfire. So we can actually go out and one other part we can supply for them with the plans. I'm just working right to the end. I know this is a little boring, but as you get to the end, that's when a wood will typically split or break. But you want to start at one end and work your way down. And as you can see, I'm out of ace bandages, so I'm going to have to buy an ace bandage tonight. And since this is a test piece, it really doesn't matter. I'm getting, oh hey, I'm almost to the end here. Yeah, I really do need 2 ace bandages though. Okay, now, because I don't have, this is a piece of shit ace bandage, by the way. I'll start, and this is just a stopgap until I get another bandage. I can also use this. The reason this is not as good as the ace bandage is because this doesn't let the part really breathe. The good part about the ace bandage is it lets it breathe. Well, by tomorrow I'll have 2 ace bandages, so this won't be necessary, but this will allow me again to get 1 test in today. And I have probably another hour of shoveling, looking at that snow out there. I can't believe it. What a handicap that's been this year. Between a doctor and a snowman, unbelievable. Okay, I'm right at the end. I'll press this down, and I'm going to stick this up by a heating vent and see. Hey, here's our first mold test right there. I just thought of another thing I could do. I'm squeezing down so the wood takes a good impression of that wire. And now it'll be fun. I'll crank the heat up. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to crank the heat up in the house, and then I'm going to go out and shovel snow for a while. That's probably going to be the end of this session. But tomorrow when I come down here, we should have us a molded part. Hey. Or we'll have a test part and we can start all over again. That wire to be a good impression, because otherwise how do you cut the part out and get a nice straight edge on it? Anyway, for one experimental day, I'd say this has been a good one. Just thought of another idea. Maybe you could use a baseball bat to make a top block if you didn't want to make a mold. Thought. Good thought for today. Anyway, time to go and see Mr. Snow Shovel. My good friend, Mr. Snow Shovel. Now, while I was out shoveling, I had this great idea, because what I did, I fired up the heat in the house. I want this hanging by the heating vent. I wasn't happy with it sitting over there. So, took one of these little plan hooks, and I have a hook up by the heating vent. I can hang it right at the heating vent. Boy, that'll go a long way to getting this stuff dried out by tomorrow. Look, here's the heating vent. Hanging up nice. Hey. This is what, you just keep getting these ideas. Back to shoveling. Now I got a little bit of time before I go up and sack out here. Boy, a lot of snow out there. And what I'm trying to do is I look through all my balsa blocks, and this looked like the most useless of all of them. It's really like a rock, in fact. So what I did, I lopped off a piece, and what I'm trying to do is just get the final fit here. And again, it's just getting this angle up by the nose ring just the way I want, and I'll just block sand that in with the block sander and the machine on. tuning this angle. Let's take a little bit of the material off. It even needs more. Getting close. And once you get close, then I like to just dry fit it each time. Remember, up on this top edge, you're always going to have a glue radius that'll distort the fit. So always get a little radius in that top, that little corner. Oh, almost there. Get that corner radius off just a little bit. Nice tight fit. Now the nice thing about doing this is these ends will all fall in place. Once you get this angle up here set and we're ready to lay out the back of the bottom block, once you get the nose ring angle, it's this angle here that's critical. Once you get that and it's a nice tight fit, you can see I still have a little more to go. Just a little more and I'll have it. Alright, this morning, back from old Rite Aid, picked up what I'm going to try now. This is sudsy ammonia. I don't know what the hell the difference is. I got clear ammonia and I got sudsy ammonia, so I'll give both of those a try. Do more testing with that. I got another big ace bandage, and I just realized these ace bandages come in all different sizes. If you buy one, buy the biggest wide. See, this is twice as wide as the other one, and it's a self-stick one, so that'll be a big help. Last night I had a little time. Where the hell's my garbage can? A little disoriented this morning. Got the new Band-Aid. I got the block roughed out. I'm going to start on that. But time management, as always, time management. First thing I want to do is pull this apart. I had this hanging up by the heating vent. See what it looks like. I don't want to use tape anymore. I'd like to use bandages for the whole thing. I'll pull this apart, get an idea of just where we are on the ecological scale of things here. And we have our first shell, amazingly enough. Looks like it worked reasonably well. Now this is 3/32 wood, so I don't know if this is going to be strong enough, but this will be a good first test piece. Now the first thing I want to look at, let me look at this on the macro lens. You see the impression that wire left in the wood? I think you can see it right there. Well, now I can take a brand new razor blade, brand new X-Acto knife, and trim this down. And as you get to the back, of course, if you didn't have that line in there. Now see, here's one of the things I was talking about. I did that storyboard. If you would have carved this top block up and maintained the same thickness all the way through, see how funny that curve gets in the back? And when you buff the paint, it gives you a funny, it always looks like the ass is dragging, so keep in mind, that's one of the criteria we had, is we'd have that block tapered from relatively thick to thin. Alright, I'm going to get a knife, trim this down, and get an idea of how this fits on here, because we need the bottom block and I need to get this angle in here before I can make up the cowling. Now what I'm doing, because I have that line is, let's see how I can do this, 32nd of an inch line, I can take a red pen. This will just help the fact that I'm about 3/4 blind. Up here it didn't take a good impression for some reason. Without that line, though, you would have a really difficult time, I can imagine, figuring out where the parting line should be. In fact, I can hardly see it even with the line. It's almost impossible to see. In the back, it looks like it took very well. Now, one of the things I can figure out is on future molds, use a little bit bigger diameter wire. Maybe that'll make it easier. Or just get some new eyes, that would help. And then of course I have to get a little dry fit on here. Boy, this is difficult to do even with the line here. I'm trying to let the pen just walk in that little line. Now I'll just cut this, leaving the line on here, leaving a little bit oversized, and then block sand out the last little bit. Looks like it's coming right off. Okay, next thing I have to figure a way I want to block sand this down. Now it looks pretty reasonable. If anything though, see what I want to determine before I make the second one up. We're on the small side. What I really did, I took a little bit too much material off on the mold. So the next piece I want to put, I'm trying to interpolate this. I want to put a 1/16 of an inch of sheeting underneath this. And I'll do that now so it can be drying. About a 1/16 of an inch of material underneath the mold, and then the piece I'm going to mold. So what in effect will happen is this will grow a 1/16 of an inch. Now I just want to get a rough reading of where we are on the weight situation. The lightest bottom block I've ever had is just roughly 20 grams. I've had some at 19, but most of them come out about 20 if I remember right. And you can see right now we're at 10 and a half, 10 and a little less than a half. So we've cut the weight of the block in half. The reason it's in half is because you can see that the thickness is completely uniform. And if anything, this will be stronger because now we have the grain going in the right direction. When you carve a block, you lose the directional strength of the grain to some degree. So I think this is going to be a real positive thing to work on. Now, one of the things I want to work on, I'm going to make, while we're working on the cowling, see that time management thing, I'll wrap, I'm trying to decide if I want to wrap a 1/16 or what, how I want to do this. And then instead of 3/32, I'll use a piece of 1/8. So in effect, I'll expand this out quite a bit. Then I'll have a comparison of the 1/8 inch piece molded and the 3/32 molded. I think this is really a little on the thin side. You wouldn't have a lot of sanding, but again, you won't get it. If you can carve a bottom block lighter than 10 grams, even I'll be impressed. Now the piece of wood that I have here is 4 inches wide, and I'm just afraid when I get to the back it's going to bend up and I won't be able to get the ace bandage completely around it. So what I'm going to do is like a little bit of a trim here. I don't even know if I have to do this. This is going to be another test, and what I'm going to do, after measuring these up and looking at them a few times, this is a piece of 1/8 inch, and I'm going to put two 30-second shims underneath it. So I'm going to wet these down, and then I'll have permanent shims that I can use. I can shim the block bigger or smaller. Again, I think a lot of this is overkill. I think when you attach the block, you could just spread it or bend it just a little bit, but this will give me a lot of choices. I'm trying to use the vacuum bench to get some of the fumes out of here. What would be nice, like if you live in California or somewhere where you can do this kind of stuff outdoors, boy, would it be nice. And just literally soak the wood with ammonia. I have two different kinds of ammonia, and I looked at the ingredients, they're totally different. So I'm going to try, this is the original ammonia, and I'm going to try one test with the others, the new, the sudsy, Rite Aid sudsy ammonia. Just let that soak in. You notice how the wood bows? The minute you release the tension in the wood cells, the wood just bows like crazy. So we're roughly at the point where we can knock half of the weight out of the bottom block and the top block. I think we're looking at knocking quite a bit of weight out, but not only that, we're making a part that's more rigid, easy to duplicate, and hey, maybe even a part we can manufacture for sale. We can make up molds for the Cardinal or whatever. Boy, it would be nice if you had a Cardinal kit and the parts already came molded, huh? Sometime in the future, maybe? That would really be nice. Or even even a nobler if you could just put that, like the old Top Flight kit, the turtle deck right on place. I'm not even sure you have to put ammonia on these 32nd inch pieces, but I just want to be safe. And this will give me permanent shims, if that's the right word. Use to shim the mold in and out. Now after a minute or two, you can just feel the ammonia starting to soak in. This wood has a real stiff spot right down the edge. I can feel, see how nice it bends there, but over here it doesn't want to bend. So this might not be an ideal piece of wood. If it splits, we'll just go make up another one. No erasing the tape. This is an ongoing development thing, so please allow for a little test time and you can learn right along with me. This is, in my book, this is the only way to learn. You just got to do this stuff. I'm trying to keep this right in the middle. These two shims. Now I know this wood has a hard spot in it, so if this isn't going to be a good piece of wood, and I'll try to center it up as much as I can, I'll just go wet up another piece. We have plenty of wood to expect. By the way, this is not really great wood that I'm using. This is kind of mediocre to average wood because I just want to use the mold. This is the new ace bandage, so let's see if there's any advantage to this. An advantage if I could get it started. I hear something splitting already. Not always the best sound in the world. Okay. Got the front pinched. And now we can work our way to the back a little bit. I know this is one of the steps that looks a little tricky. And you can imagine the fun Al Rabe must have had doing this, and Frank McMillan. When you do just parts like this, you can imagine him molding full fuselage shells. What kind of work must have been involved, but I just heard the wood split, but I think it's off the part. Yeah, it is off the part. And I know even if it splits, we could go back and use it, glue it. Now I know Midgley's in Florida right now. I know he's trying to do some molding, so it'll be interesting later on in the week. I'll talk to him, see what he's got done so far. Okay, that's, you know what I can see is I could use a couple more bandages. Kind of shortchange myself on bandages here. Now as I wrap in the second one, the extra that I have, I'm just going to work my way back up like a barber pole. Now because this piece is 1/8 inch, it's really not super conforming. Of course, one of the other choices that we have, and we're going to be doing some of this I hope, is try to use 2 pieces of 1/16 with a little bit of white glue in between them to make a shell. Then we can weigh that against a piece of solid wood. More to come, stay tuned here. This is part of the one of the parts of the hobby I enjoy the most, is just trying to improvise, trying to improve, reduce the workload for building a really nice model. Like I'm wrapping a mummy here. Mummy abuse. Okay, now the old trick, squeeze, get that rod. In fact, I'm going to put some tape over this. This old band, I got to get a couple more bandages. I should have bought 2 of them while I was over there this morning. Just another one of my shortcomings. I thought, hey, 2 will be plenty. Not really. See, I wouldn't want to use the tape on the whole thing because it doesn't breathe. Now I can kind of, as that's under tension, squeeze it. This did split at the back, but who cares? If it splits in the back, you can always take and make a little block where the tail wheel wire comes out anyway. That won't be a big handicap. I'm taking 3 sheets of 220 paper and I'm taping them together on the back side. This is just to make a very temporary, very rough sanding block, because I need to fit this one piece. Now what I can do with this, of course, flip this over. I just need to run that block on here a few times. My big sanding block is not really the right size and the grid is too rough. This is a handy thing for even doing top blocks or anything, even for truing up the top of fuselages. Now of course where the tape is, there's going to be a little bit of a high spot, but this is just for roughing. This is not for a final cut. I'm just trying to move my hand down little by little. I just want to get a nice edge on there. Now Frank McMillan gave me a good tip when I talked to Frank about molding. He said do all the sanding on the mold. Well, unfortunately we put the mold away already for the day. But if this was going to be a final finished part, I would have left this on the mold and then did all my sanding with 400 paper right on the mold. Okay. Now I'm just looking to make sure that this fits real close on both, and which it does. It looks pretty real close, in fact. Because once I carve the cowling block, I want to be able to duplicate the cowling, of course. You can see a little test block. This would normally be a little block if we were going to use this. This is just a test piece though, but the reason I have this test piece is I need to now get this angle in here. I need to interpolate that out and block sand it in so that I can cut my cowling block. Now I'll just take a big rough cut here and then do the rest of it with a sanding block. Now right up here, I just want to tack this one slight little drop. I don't want to glue this on permanently. I'll just hold that in place while I'm working on my cowl block. Well, you can see how nice that edge comes. Beautiful. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I want that edge to be hardened up while I'm working on it. Then I'll just razor that off later. Alright, I got a nice edge on everything now. That'll give me a good edge to work with. Now I'm just test fitting up this block, and I really want to get a nice fit, so I've been extra careful, even to get just one swipe of the sandpaper to get a nice tight fit. I don't want to have any sloppiness here at all. Just get an idea of how tight that fit really is. I don't want any extra. And I spent quite a bit of time actually just getting this fit nice and tight. And I've just got it all tack glued into position now. And just on a couple of dots here, a couple of dots around the back, just so it gives me some rigidity to work with when I actually do the roughing out. Now the next operation here is I want to rough this out. Now we're right at the end of this tape. We don't have much tape left on here, so I don't want to be in the middle of this and do this. I'll pick this up on the beginning of the next tape and we'll work on all the work we're going to do with the COWL. Just to give a little review of where we are here, you can see we're working off Martens's drawing and working pretty accurately. Ready to start carving the cowling. We got blocks up here drying under the heating vent. Mike Rogers stuff in silver. All our component parts. Ventrini's big tsunami. John DeTavio's body. Within the next couple days we're going to be working on John's ship that has the experimental doublers. The wing's still drying to big tsunami with 8,000 pins. My wife's craft stuff. Right about this time of year, it just turns into a nut house around here. And I expect 4 or 5 people over here later today, so I'm trying to rush through this cowling thing. It's this way. This is it. Christmas at the Ertnowski house. Anyway, more on this later, and we'll pick you up on the next video. Cowlings, molding blocks, tsunamis.